Yo, welcome to the NucleoGenesis project. My name is Dr. James Utley, and if you don't know who I am, I'm your resident codebreaker data scraper. I am a board certified longevity scientist, have a PhD in health science, and a certified advanced biotherapies professional. Okay, now NucleoGenesis comes out of Syndicate Laboratories. This is part 11. So we are going to go through it. All right, so part 11. But first, nucleogenesis, if you weren't aware, is a temporal framework for eukaryotic nuclear blueprint manifest, archival, and reconstruction. So what that means is we're building a digital file that has an anchor, which is fresh known data, and then it has a long horizon, which means we're layering on data as we go, and that builds a nuclear blueprint manifest, which is what do you need that for? Well, that is to build a nucleus. That is to build a digital file of a nucleus or a digital twin of a nucleus, which you can use to synthesize that actual nucleus in the future for whatever you'd like, deep space travel, cloning, whatever you'd like. Or you can also use that nucleus, the data from that nucleus, to probably train another model, and that's those are kind of some those are short description of applications that we have right now. All right, well, let's get over to the project, which is we are now part 11, which is phase 4, part 5. So, but anyway, doesn't matter. Future-proofed orchestration and archival system, right? So this is how we break down. So first we started with the Nucleo sampler, which is the first application. Then it's the Nucleo builder, which builds the nuclear blueprint manifest. Then we got the Nucleo reconstruction, which is the way that you 3D model or look at the nucleus. And now we're at this stage of the game, which is the Nucleo Synthesizer. And that provides a long horizon orchestration layer for managing the nuclear blueprint manifest and reconstruction nuclear models across decades of scale timelines. So this is the program that will manage the information from what you have built in terms of the nuclear blueprint manifest or the digital twin of a nucleus. And okay, so the core premise of this phase is the biological archive section, which provides the dried blood spot samples, which is the sample card that we have, or the sample method that we have chosen. And we know that they are not static assets, but continuously appreciating informational substrates where value increases as assay technologies and analytical pipelines and computational models advance. So what that means is that what is trapped in a very robust, mechanism, which is the dried blood spot sample, right? And that can withstand a calamity, a lab down. You don't have a bunch of liquid nitrogen tanks and all this other stuff, right? So you have this preservation of material. Now you're just keeping that material around so that the value of that material will increase as the testing technologies increase, the analytical pipelines increase, meaning AI and ML, and then the computational methods advance. So as technology advances, you have the information. So it's a collect now, decrypt later type of scenario here. And to accommodate this reality, Nucleo Synthesizer introduces two foundational concepts. And that is technology slots, which reserve explicit interface for anticipated future assay modalities, and version control of your NBM evolution. So you have your information, you have your NBM, your Nucleo Blueprint Manifest, which is your anchor layer, and you are building on top of that as the future assays become available, meaning future testing, right? To do that, you have to have the space for technology slots to reserve an explicit interface of what is old and what is new, and it has the ability to anticipate that, right? And this is a very abstract concept. I'm very sorry, but to do so, you have to start having all of the version control, which is all part of the cryptographic timeline that we talked about in the many other videos of this project. And so it's a version control and also having the space to provide what could be for future testing. So you're ultimately trying to achieve an architecture for long-term data integrity. That's what it's meant for, right? So the long-term biological reconstruction requires stronger guarantees than conventional data management systems. Over a multi-decade timescale, integrity failures are more likely to arise from silent drift, ambiguous format, or provenance loss from catastrophic hardware failure, right? So provenance loss, which means from the origin loss because of data from hardware. And so the synthesizer, the Nucleo Synthesizer, prioritizes determinism, traceability, and immutability. And that's really where we're at. So, okay, so let's get into it. So, deterministic hashing, all artifacts that are managed by the Nucleo Synthesizer, the NBM, that's the reconstruction of outputs, the contact matrices, the metadata objects, and all the content is addressed through a cryptographic hash, right? And you have it outlined right here. Oh, is this thing frozen? Hope not. Yeah, it is. Okay. And so let's see if we can quickly unfreeze it while we are still talking here. Okay, and we're back and unfrozen. Hopefully, I'll cut this out, that part out of the video. All right, so here we are. This is the cryptographic hash right here, which is the artifact ID. That's the SHA-256 encryption, the canonical serialization, and the artifact. And that's how it's wrapped up. Okay, now moving on here is the approach. This approach ensures that the artifact's identity is inseparable from its content. Any modifications, however, minor, they would yield a new identifier. So that's like building version control, preventing undetected drift or silent corruption. Like that's the whole point, is that you're talking about a timescale, a long horizon testing model. So you need to make sure that you can control the version over a long distance of time. And so it opens up, JSON keys and using an international standard of ISO 8601 UTC to eliminate time zone dependence, et cetera, et cetera. Now we move into the version control of the NBM evolution. A new analytical results become available as the new results become available, such as you're analyzing another DBS spot from the card, using an improved sequenced chemistry or a novel computational inference, which is probably going to happen in the future, but it's hard to know. The NBM must evolve without erasing and overriding prior knowledge. So you're still using that base layer, right? So you may like drop into a test that's like far more advanced than anything that we are seeing now. With this, it will not erase what has happened in the past, so that you will have that as the anchor. That's the idea anyway. And a cryptographic hash of its parent versions. And it's just version control, to making sure that, over long periods of time that you can still access the root data and it's preserved, and that as you're building it in the future, it's not like drifting or there's like a bunch of too much of assumptions that you can't trace back. So it becomes like a different species. You don't want that. You're trying to maintain control. All right, so optimistic locking for concurrent access. NBMs may be assessed and updated by multiple processes, automated reanalysis pipelines, reconstruction engines, or human operators, potentially all of them in parallel. But to prevent accidental overwrites while avoiding heavy locking, the synthesizer employs optimistic concurrency control. And that is this algorithm here, algorithm 4, which is the NBM update for optimistic locking, which means that you can't go back, which means you can update a bunch of stuff. Like there's can be a lot of updates and it can be continuous, but it's all version control. So it's not going back and rewriting over something that was done before, right? So and the basis is that as these files grow, they grow in mass size, but the technology that is happening also is to reduce file size, right? So we're like at this part where we're exploding in compute. Well, what's going to happen is that is all going to be toned down, meaning like it's going to require less, file storage, compute, service space, all of this type of stuff, and that will happen concurrently. So what you're doing is your file is going to get humongous, but because of technology, it's going to start condensing it. And technology slots for future assays, which is here. Okay, so now we're going to drop into here, which is the anticipated technology slots, which we know is long reads. So, long reads is happening and will happen in more with more specificity and more use cases and all of that stuff. So this is kind of like what we're looking at, and meaning that this is my predictions here, which we have long reads, of course, which is happening, but it's definitely estimated in this year. Spatial resolving, they know we're just running like with the humidity control and the spatial methalone. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's a little optimistic. I'm not sure. But as we go down here, we have but this is the estimated time that's available, and would be the requirements, right? As from information that I'm aware of right now. All right, so storage abstraction layer. I threw MongoDB here is because they're sponsoring another my project, and I have a bunch of server space, a bunch of database space with MongoDB, but I'm probably going to change that. But that's I just wanted to make sure there was like some part of the tech stack that you could see that would make sense, and we can plug and play whatever bucket you want or whatever service provider. Okay, security and access control. Right now it seems that this could probably be advanced a little bit, but often is the JWT for auth, JWT based identity with RS-256 signatures, authorization there, the audit. So this is what the performance benchmarks would be theoretically. Obviously, could change over time. And we have moved on to this last page, but the slides did not advance here because there is something happening with the good old presentation here. So I'm just going to read it, but the interpretation is the phase 4, right, which is the phase that we're on here, of nucleogenesis, elevates it from a reconstruction pipeline into a durable computational institution by combining deterministic identity, explicit versioning, forward compatible assay planning, and cryptographically enforced integrity. Nucleo Synthesizer ensures that the biological information preserved today remains actionable, auditable, and expandable for decades to come, even as technologies, institutions, and analytical paradigms change. So you have to so we're going to circle back to how we were cryptographically measuring or cryptographically logging all of the items for the information to build the nuclear blueprint manifest. Now the nuclear blueprint manifest is developed. You've built a reconstruction model of that, and by doing so, you're now trying to wrap that in a version control system, which will be able to add on top of that. So it's basically version control of the information to build the nuclear blueprint manifest, checkpoint. Then nuclear blueprint manifest, you're starting to reconstruct an actual nucleus from that nuclear blueprint manifest, and you have to control all the versions, and then you have to leave the opportunity for assays to change, but without changing what you have previously done. So it is just a complex version control system, and that, I think, is where we're going to end today. And thank you very much for joining. My name is Dr. James Utley, and I will see you in the future. You can read this whole paper at syndicate-labs.io, syndicate-labs.io. Otherwise, I'll see you in part 12. Peace.